Have you ever looked at your bank account and wondered if you accidentally signed up for a subscription service called Broke Life Premium? You know the feeling. You work hard, think you're being responsible with money, yet somehow that magical six-figure savings goal feels about as attainable as becoming a professional unicorn trainer. Here's what might surprise you. Reaching your first $100,000 isn't just some fantasy reserved for trust fund babies and crypto millionaires who got lucky buying Dogecoin with their lunch money. The truth is, once you understand the psychology behind wealth building and implement the right strategies, that first $100,000 can happen faster than you think. And here's what's really wild about this milestone. It's not just another number in your account. It's the point where your money starts working harder than your cousin who posts motivational quotes on LinkedIn every morning. Charlie Munger famously said that the first $100,000 is the hardest, because once you hit that mark, compound interest becomes your best friend, and the next $100,000 comes significantly quicker. In this video, I reveal 9 specific strategies that can dramatically reduce the time it takes to reach your first $100,000. Strategy number 9. It's the one that separates people who build real wealth from those stuck in the financial hamster wheel forever. Before we dive into the first one, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss any videos, and comment Wealth Builder along with your current savings goal. Thank you so much, and now we're getting started. Strategy 1. Avoiding lifestyle inflation. The first strategy that separates people who build real wealth from those stuck in the financial hamster wheel forever is avoiding lifestyle inflation. This might be the most important principle on this entire list because it's where most people completely sabotage their financial future without even realizing it. Every time your income increases, you face a critical choice that will determine whether you build wealth or stay broke forever. In the prosperous ancient kingdom, where rulers received increasing tributes as their territories expanded, there lived 2 equally powerful leaders, whose completely different approaches to managing newfound wealth would determine not only their personal prosperity, but the legacy they left for future generations. Both rulers started with modest kingdoms and identical resources, yet their responses to growing income would create dramatically different outcomes. The first ruler, known as the expanding palace master, believed that visible success required matching lifestyle to current income level. Each time his territory grew and tributes increased, the expanding palace master would immediately invest those additional resources in making his living quarters more impressive. When annual tributes rose from 40,000 to 50,000 gold pieces, he expanded his palace with grander halls. When they reached 60,000 pieces, he added luxurious gardens and elaborate decorations. The expanding palace master took great pride in his magnificent surroundings and felt that his impressive lifestyle reflected his growing success as a leader. However, despite receiving substantially more tribute each year, he remained financially vulnerable because every increase in income was immediately absorbed by lifestyle expansion. His personal treasury never grew, leaving him dependent on continued tribute income without building any reserves for future security. The second ruler, called the wise wealth builder, made a completely different choice that initially seemed almost austere to outside observers. Despite receiving the same increasing tributes, the wise wealth builder maintained his original modest palace while directing every additional gold piece toward building a substantial personal treasury that could generate ongoing income through strategic investments. Years later, when economic challenges reduced tribute income throughout the region, the contrast became undeniable. The expanding palace master struggled to maintain his expensive lifestyle and had no reserves to weather difficulties, while the wise wealth builder's accumulated treasury had grown so substantial that investment returns alone exceeded his original tribute income. Here's what that story reveals about wealth building. Your lifestyle should be based on what you want your life to look like, not what you happen to be earning at the moment. The average millionaire saves over half their income because they understand that every dollar saved today becomes several dollars in the future. The next strategy can free up more money than you probably realize, and it might require some unconventional thinking. Strategy 2: optimizing housing costs. The second strategy that can free up more money in your budget than any other single change is optimizing your housing costs. Here's the brutal truth nobody wants to talk about. If you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, you're making it nearly impossible to build wealth quickly. For most people, housing often consumes 40, 50, or even 60% of their monthly income, essentially forcing them to work just to keep a roof over their head. In the mountainous trading regions where successful merchants transported valuable goods across treacherous terrain, there lived two equally skilled traders who faced the challenge of carrying their accumulated wealth while maintaining the mobility necessary for profitable commerce. Both merchants had earned substantial treasures through years of successful trading, yet their approaches to wealth transportation would determine their long-term prosperity and growth potential. The first merchant, known as the heavy chest carrier, believed that impressive wealth required an equally impressive storage system. He commissioned master craftsmen to build an enormous, ornately decorated treasure chest made from the finest materials and adorned with precious metals and gemstones. This magnificent chest could hold vast amounts of gold and silver, and its appearance commanded respect and admiration from everyone who saw it. However, the heavy chest carrier's beautiful storage system created a devastating problem. It was so massive and heavy that he could barely move it. Transporting the chest required hiring multiple assistants, purchasing specialized equipment, and traveling slowly along the safest but least profitable routes. The chest's weight and size consumed so much of his energy and resources that he had little capacity left for acquiring new goods or exploring lucrative trading opportunities. The second merchant, called the efficient wealth keeper, took a completely different approach that initially seemed almost humble compared to his peers' impressive display. Instead of one massive chest, he designed a lightweight, portable system of secure pouches and hidden compartments that could hold substantial wealth while remaining easy to transport and conceal. The efficient wealth keeper's streamlined approach allowed him to move quickly between markets, carry diverse trading goods, and respond rapidly to profitable opportunities. While his wealth storage system wasn't as visually impressive, his mobility enabled him to accumulate far more treasure over time because he wasn't burdened by the massive overhead costs of maintaining an unwieldy storage system. Here's what that story reveals. Housing costs can become such a burden that they prevent you from building wealth effectively. Creative solutions like roommates, strategic relocation, or house hacking can reduce this massive expense, freeing up hundreds or thousands of dollars monthly for wealth building. Wait, this strategy literally gives you free money that millions leave on the table every year. Strategy 3: additional income streams. The third strategy challenges the traditional advice about living below your means by focusing on a more powerful approach, expanding your means while keeping your lifestyle constant. Instead of trying to squeeze every penny out of your current income, this strategy involves creating additional revenue streams that are specifically earmarked for investing, allowing you to build wealth without feeling like you're depriving yourself of life's enjoyments. In the arid valleys where water scarcity determined the survival and prosperity of entire communities, there lived a master engineer who was commissioned to design sustainable water systems for a growing settlement. This engineer, known as the multiple springs creator, understood that depending on a single water source was a dangerous strategy that left communities vulnerable to drought, contamination, or system failure. The traditional approach used by most settlements was to dig one large, deep well and focus all maintenance efforts on keeping that single source flowing adequately. These communities would assign workers to operate pumps manually throughout each day, believing that working harder at their primary water source was the solution to meeting their growing needs. However, the multiple springs creator recognized a fundamental flaw in this thinking. No matter how efficiently you operate a single well, you're still limited by that source's maximum capacity. Instead of focusing solely on optimizing one water source, the multiple springs creator designed an innovative system that included several smaller springs, rainwater collection networks, and gravity-fed distribution channels. Each individual source might not provide as much water as the main well, but together they created a robust system that could supply far more water than any single source could provide. Most importantly, the multiple springs creator designed these additional water sources to operate independently of the main well, meaning that workers didn't need to choose between maintaining their primary source and developing supplementary ones. The community could continue operating its original well while simultaneously benefiting from the additional flow provided by the new systems. Years later, when severe drought affected the entire region, settlements dependent on a single water source faced critical shortages, while the multiple springs community thrived with an abundant supply from their diversified system. Here's what that story reveals about income building. Creating additional revenue streams specifically for investing allows you to build wealth without reducing your current lifestyle. This extra income never becomes part of your regular budget, so investing it doesn't feel like deprivation. All of the above becomes meaningless if you're leaving this free money on the table. Strategy 4. Employer 401k matching. The fourth strategy literally gives you free money, yet millions of Americans leave it on the table every single year. I'm talking about employer 401k matching. And if you're not maxing this out, you're basically telling your boss you don't want a raise. This is probably the closest thing to a guaranteed investment return you'll ever find. Yet people will spend hours researching the best deal on a phone to save $50 while leaving thousands in matching contributions unclaimed. In the bustling marketplace where ambitious merchants formed partnerships to expand their trading ventures, there lived a successful trader who received an extraordinary offer from a wealthy patron who wanted to support promising entrepreneurs. This patron, known as the generous investment partner, proposed a remarkable arrangement that seemed almost too good to be true. The generous investment partner's offer was simple but powerful. For every gold piece the merchant invested in expanding his trading operations, the patron would contribute an additional half gold piece, up to a maximum of 6% of the merchant's annual earnings. This meant that if the merchant earned 50,000 gold pieces annually and chose to invest 3,000 pieces in business expansion, the generous investment partner would automatically add another 1,500 pieces to the investment fund. The arrangement provided an immediate 50% return on the merchant's investment before any actual trading profits were even considered. It was essentially free money that required only the merchant's willingness to participate in the partnership by making his own contributions. The patron explained that this generous offer was available to all merchants in the marketplace. But surprisingly, many traders either ignored the opportunity entirely or contributed far less than the maximum amount that would qualify for matching. Some merchants claimed they couldn't afford to invest the full amount eligible for matching, not realizing they were essentially refusing a guaranteed 50% return on their money. Others simply never took the time to understand the partnership terms, missing out on thousands of gold pieces in free contributions each year. Meanwhile, the wise merchants, who maximized their contributions to receive the full matching amount, built substantial trading capital much faster than those who tried to grow their businesses using only their own resources. Here's what that story reveals about 401k matching. Show me another investment that guarantees you a 50% return on day one. When your employer offers matching contributions, they're giving you an immediate return before the stock market even gets involved. Leaving this money unclaimed is like refusing a winning lottery ticket because you're worried about taxes. This next strategy can save you thousands annually through government-approved techniques. Strategy 5. Tax optimization. The fifth strategy can save you thousands annually through government-approved techniques that most people completely ignore. I'm talking about tax optimization. And no, this doesn't mean hiding money in offshore accounts or pretending your Netflix subscription is a business expense. These are legitimate strategies that the government actually wants you to use. But for some reason, most people put more thought into choosing their morning coffee than minimizing their tax burden. In the prosperous trading kingdom, where merchants contributed portions of their earnings to support royal operations, there lived a wise chancellor who recognized that successful traders needed incentives to build personal wealth that would strengthen the entire kingdom's economy. The chancellor, known as the strategic tax planner, implemented an innovative policy designed to encourage long-term wealth building among the merchant class. The strategic tax planner announced that any merchant who committed to building a personal treasury for future security could receive immediate reductions in their annual tax obligations. For every gold piece a merchant deposited into their designated long-term wealth fund, the royal treasury would reduce that merchant's current year tax burden by the same amount. This meant that merchants could effectively build wealth using pre-tax income, creating an immediate discount on every investment. However, the strategic tax planner discovered something remarkable. Despite this generous incentive being available to every merchant in the kingdom, most traders either ignored the opportunity entirely or failed to maximize their participation. Many merchants would complain about their heavy tax burdens while simultaneously refusing to take advantage of the very mechanism designed to reduce those taxes. Meanwhile, the wise merchants who understood the strategic tax planner's offer maximized their contributions to these special wealth-building accounts. When a merchant earning 50,000 gold pieces annually contributed 10,000 pieces to their future security fund, they only paid taxes on 40,000 pieces of income. If they were in the 22% tax bracket, this strategy saved them 2,200 gold pieces in taxes, meaning they only needed 7,800 pieces from their actual take-home earnings to make a 10,000-piece investment. These strategic merchants understood that the kingdom was essentially offering them a guaranteed discount on building wealth. Yet their peers continued missing this opportunity year after year. Here's what that story reveals about tax optimization. Traditional 401k and IRA contributions reduce your taxable income dollar for dollar, giving you an immediate return before your investments even have a chance to grow. The government is giving you a discount on wealth building, but you have to be smart enough to use it. Do you think you understand smart investing? This reveals the foundation that most people get completely wrong. Strategy 6. Choosing right investments. The sixth strategy reveals the foundation that most people get completely wrong when building their first $100,000. Here's the truth about investment selection. When you're starting out, your goal should be solid, consistent growth, not hitting home runs. You're not trying to get rich quick, you're trying to get rich for sure. Yet people either overthink it to death, researching individual stocks, or don't think about it at all, leaving money in savings accounts earning basically nothing. In the abundant agricultural regions where master gardeners cultivated crops to feed entire kingdoms, there lived an experienced cultivator who was tasked with creating a reliable food supply that could sustain the royal court through all seasons and economic conditions. This gardener, known as the proven harvest master, faced a critical choice between two completely different approaches to crop selection and cultivation. The first approach, favored by many ambitious gardeners, involved selecting exotic, high-potential seeds that promised extraordinary yields if conditions were perfect. These specialized varieties required extensive research, precise timing, constant monitoring, and significant expertise to succeed. Some gardeners spent months studying individual seed varieties, analyzing soil conditions, and attempting to predict weather patterns to optimize their exotic crop selections. However, the proven harvest master understood a fundamental principle that his peers often missed. The royal court needed reliable sustenance, not spectacular successes followed by devastating failures. Instead of gambling on exotic varieties, he chose to cultivate a diverse collection of the most successful, time-tested crops that had consistently fed kingdoms for centuries. The proven harvest master's approach centered on planting seeds that represented ownership in the most productive, well-established agricultural regions across the entire kingdom. Rather than betting on individual farms or specific crops, he created a system where his gardens contained representative samples from approximately 500 of the most successful growing operations in the realm. This strategy meant that when he planted his gardens, he effectively owned small portions of vast grain operations, fruit orchards, livestock farms, and vegetable cultivation centers that were already generating abundant harvests year after year. These weren't speculative investments in untested agricultural experiments. They were established operations with proven track records of feeding populations and creating abundance. Years later, while gardeners who had chosen exotic, high-risk varieties experienced dramatic successes and failures, the proven harvest master's diversified approach had generated steady, reliable abundance that consistently supported the royal court through all economic seasons. Here's what that story reveals about investment selection. S&P 500 index funds give you ownership in 500 of the largest, most successful American companies. You don't need to be a financial genius, you just need to own a piece of proven business success. The following strategy can save you tens of thousands over your investing lifetime. Strategy 7. Minimizing investment fees. The seventh strategy can save you tens of thousands over your investing lifetime. Yet most people have no idea how much they're actually paying or how dramatically these costs impact their wealth building. I'm talking about minimizing investment fees, those silent taxes on your returns that compound against you over time. Investment fees might seem small annually, but they work exactly like compound interest, except they're stealing your money instead of growing it. In the vast trading empire where merchants transported valuable goods across great distances to reach profitable markets, there lived two equally successful traders who discovered different routes to the same lucrative destination. Both merchants sold identical products and earned similar profits from their trading ventures. Yet, their approaches to transportation costs would create dramatically different long-term wealth outcomes. The first merchant, known as the premium route traveler, chose to transport his goods using the most prestigious shipping company in the empire, which charged premium rates for their services. The premium route traveler believed that paying higher transportation fees demonstrated his success and ensured superior service quality. This shipping company charged 1% of his total cargo value annually for their transportation services, which seemed like a reasonable expense for professional handling. The second merchant, called the efficient pathfinder, discovered that multiple shipping companies offered essentially identical transportation services to the same destinations. After careful research, the efficient pathfinder found a reliable company that charged only 0.1% annually for moving the same goods over the same routes with the same level of security and reliability. Initially, the 0.9% difference in transportation costs seemed insignificant to outside observers. Both merchants continued earning similar profits from their trading activities, and the premium route traveler enjoyed the prestige associated with using the expensive shipping service. However, the efficient pathfinder directed his transportation savings into additional trading capital that could generate compound returns. Over 30 years of trading, this seemingly small difference in transportation costs created a staggering wealth gap. The 0.9% annual savings, when reinvested and compounded, resulted in the efficient pathfinder accumulating hundreds of thousands more gold pieces than the premium route traveler. despite both merchants conducting identical trading businesses. The premium route traveler had essentially paid a massive premium for identical service, sacrificing enormous long-term wealth for the illusion of superior quality. Here's what that story reveals about investment fees. Index funds that track the S&P 500 are basically identical products, regardless of which company offers them. Why pay more for the exact same investment when every dollar saved on fees compounds and grows over time? Here's where patience meets massive compound returns in the most powerful way. Strategy 8. Reinvesting dividends. The 8th strategy is where patience meets massive compound returns in the most powerful way, yet it tests your self-control like nothing else. I'm talking about reinvesting every single dividend that comes your way instead of spending it on something fun. I know it feels great when that dividend payment hits your account. It's like your investments are paying you a salary for being smart enough to own them. But the real power isn't in the income you can spend today. It's in the compound growth you get from reinvesting those payments. In the fertile orchards where master cultivators grew fruit trees that could provide abundance for generations, there lived a patient gardener who inherited a modest grove of mature fruit trees from his family. Each harvest season, these trees produced substantial amounts of delicious fruit that could either be consumed immediately or used strategically to expand the orchard's long-term productivity and wealth-generating capacity. The patient orchard keeper understood a fundamental principle that many other fruit growers missed entirely. Every piece of fruit contained seeds that could grow into new trees, which would eventually produce even more fruit in perpetual cycles of abundance. Instead of consuming his entire harvest each season, the patient orchard keeper would carefully select the finest fruits and extract their seeds for planting new trees throughout his property. This approach required significant self-discipline because the fruit was delicious and could have been sold immediately for substantial profits. Friends and neighbors would often question his strategy, wondering why he didn't simply enjoy the abundant harvest he had worked so hard to cultivate. However, the patient orchard keeper maintained his vision of creating exponential growth through systematic reinvestment. Each season, the newly planted trees from previous harvests would mature and begin producing their own fruit, which contained seeds for even more trees. The patient orchard keeper's orchard began expanding geometrically, with each generation of trees producing larger harvests than the previous generation. The compound effect became increasingly dramatic as years passed. Meanwhile, other orchard owners who consumed or sold their entire harvests each season remained limited to the production capacity of their original trees, never expanding their wealth-generating assets beyond their initial inheritance. Decades later, the patient orchard keeper's strategic reinvestment had created an orchard empire that produced exponentially more fruit than his original grove, providing abundance that far exceeded what immediate consumption could have delivered. Here's what that story reveals about dividend investing. The S&P 500 averaged 10.7% annual returns when dividends are reinvested versus only 6.6% when taken as cash. That 4% difference transforms a comfortable retirement into wondering if you can afford to retire at all. This final strategy prevents the costliest mistakes that destroy decades of wealth building. Strategy 9. Avoiding market timing. The 9th and final strategy prevents the costliest mistakes that destroy decades of wealth building. I'm talking about resisting the urge to constantly buy and sell your investments based on market movements. I know this sounds counterintuitive because financial news makes it seem like successful investing is all about timing the market perfectly, but that's complete nonsense. Trying to time the market is like trying to predict which elevator will arrive first. You might get lucky once, but you'll end up frustrated and worse off. In the agricultural regions, where seasonal cycles determine the prosperity of farming communities, there lived two equally skilled cultivators who approached planting and harvesting with completely different philosophies. Both farmers had access to the same quality seeds, identical soil conditions, and similar weather patterns, yet their approaches to timing their agricultural activities would create dramatically different long-term wealth outcomes. The first farmer, known as the impulsive market harvester, became obsessed with trying to time every planting and harvesting decision perfectly to maximize short-term profits. He would constantly monitor weather forecasts, soil conditions, and market prices, attempting to plant only when conditions seemed ideal and harvest only when prices appeared to peak. The impulsive market harvester would often delay planting when forecasts looked uncertain, then panic and plant everything at once when conditions seemed favorable. However, this timing-focused approach created devastating problems. When the impulsive market harvester waited for perfect planting conditions, he often missed entire growing seasons. When he tried to time harvests for peak prices, he frequently missed optimal harvesting windows and lost crops to weather changes. Most critically, his constant buying and selling of seeds and equipment based on market fluctuations consumed significant resources through transaction costs. The second farmer, called the steady seasonal cultivator, took a completely different approach that initially seemed almost boring to outside observers. Instead of trying to time perfect moments, the steady seasonal cultivator followed consistent planting schedules based on natural seasonal cycles, regardless of short-term weather variations or market price fluctuations. Years later, while the impulsive market harvester had experienced dramatic successes and failures that averaged out to mediocre results, the steady seasonal cultivator's consistent approach had generated steady, reliable abundance that compounded into substantial agricultural wealth. Here's what that story reveals about market timing. If you miss just the 10 best days in the stock market over 30 years, your returns get cut almost in half. Those best days often happen right after the worst days when everyone's panicking. Your job is simple: put money in consistently and leave it alone. Now here's how all these strategies work together to create unstoppable wealth-building momentum. There you have it. 9 strategies that can dramatically accelerate your path to your first $100,000. Avoiding lifestyle inflation that sabotages wealth building. Optimizing housing costs to free up massive monthly savings. Creating additional income streams specifically for investing. Maximizing employer 401k matching for guaranteed returns. Using tax optimization to get government discounts on wealth building, choosing proven investments over speculation, minimizing fees that silently steal your returns, reinvesting dividends for compound growth, and avoiding market timing that destroys long-term wealth. Here's the powerful truth. These strategies work best when you use them together. Each one amplifies the others, creating a system that transforms reaching $100,000 from a distant dream into an inevitable outcome. When you implement all of these consistently, you're not just saving money, you're building automatic wealth-building momentum. Your challenge starting today. Choose 3 strategies to implement immediately and build from there. Which strategy will you start with and why? Comment below with your choice. And if this completely changed how you see wealth building, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos that turn financial knowledge into wealth building action. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. Every dollar you save and invest now is a gift to that person you'll become.